Hi everyone, good morning. I'm Paridhi and I'm the representative from the team Healthy Minds World. Thank you so much for joining our session today. As I'm sure you're aware that today isn't just another session. Today is World Mental Health Day, and we've organized this session to discuss an important aspect when it comes to our mental health. Our session today is to understand, to get a holistic approach towards mental health. And yeah, so for those of you who are joining us today for the first time, I'm going to start with a little introduction about us. Healthy Minds World as an online platform was started by Pallav and Vivek almost 6 months back now. That coincides with the time the lockdown and the pandemic happened. And yes, there are conversations in terms of understanding um, the impact not just on their professional lives but also on their personal front. Brought about this understanding, the realization that at a time like this, uh, there is an increased uh, need to talk about mental health, to bring about awareness, because uh, unfortunately the pandemic impacted each one of us, right, at different levels. It definitely for some of us it impacted physically, for some of us financially, and psychological well-being was something which definitely was something that was impacted. But unfortunately, given the stigma and taboo around mental health, definitely the need for increased conversations, particularly around mental well-being, was the need of the hour. And our intention wasn't just to provide help in the form of uh, digital therapy, but also to enable each one of you to have a comprehensive understanding about mental health, right? So we've been conducting workshops and webinars for the last 6 months on various topics, which enable not just those of you who come from a field of psychology, but also very simple and easy to understand courses and workshops to provide a comprehensive understanding of mental health. So there have been topics such as the psychoanalytic school of thought, understanding your subconscious mind, along with psychotherapy, clinical psychology, forensic psychology, and a lot more. We will be sharing the links to our website and social media pages for you to please feel free to check them out. So, with that, we've, the last 6 months have been extremely interesting for us to further our vision, to enable each one of you to possess a good understanding of mental health, mental well being. And yeah, coming to the session for today, given that, it is World Mental Health Day, we would like to talk about how the situation, the circumstance, especially in the last 6 months, have impacted each one of us on different levels, right? So, whether you're a mental health professional and you already are dealing with, tricky situations, and what kind of an impact uh, the lockdown, the pandemic had on your life, to school children uh, who have had to adapt to the new normal, so to say, whether it has been learning online or the disconnect with uh, their friends, with their teachers. And we also have frontline workers who have been active 24/7 for the last 6 months. And definitely all of the different categories. Sorry if I've missed out any, but the point is that all of us have had to deal with the situation in our own ways, right? And the way it has impacted our mental health is something which needs to be talked about, so as to ensure that we're able to smoothly function on different other aspects of our lives. Because it definitely, I'm not sure how much we acknowledge this, but positive mental well-being definitely shows on our other fronts as well. So whether you're physically fit or whether you're economically stable or not, it will be impacted if one's mental health is not uh, looked at, right? And with respect to the situation, we've seen that different nations have come up with they have come up with ways to basically address the problems in their own capacities. And yes, talking about the theme for this year's mental health day, it is to push for increased investment for in mental health for everyone. So the topic for this year is mental health for all, greater investment and greater access. On that note, before I introduce our speaker for today, I would quickly want to, before I request her to join us, I would quickly want to introduce. So, for our topic today, to get a holistic approach towards mental health, we will be working on four pillars of mental health, that are yoga, meditation, mindfulness, and gratitude. And we will understand how we can imbibe these practices to boost our mental health. So we have with us Dasha Hampton, who is the founder and owner of the Idaho Co-op nonprofit. She's a globally renowned yoga instructor and a mindfulness coach. She has been practicing yoga for over 20 years now and has been teaching yoga in the US as well as India, and she also specializes in yoga for kids. Um, Dasha, may I request you to join us, please?
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good too. I hope I'm audible, right?
Yes. Mhm.
Perfect, perfect. Glad
Perfect.
to have you on our panel today.
Yes, I'm so happy to be here. And I just want to recognize all that you've been doing the last 6 months. It's really, impressive that you've started this organization. And I just want to acknowledge the intention that you've had in creating this, really meaningful and worthwhile opportunity to dive into mental health and to support those around you, especially at this time. So I'm honored to be here, and I appreciate you having me. So thank you.
Thank you, Dasha. So for sorry, for our session today, given that today is World Mental Health Day, we wanted to have a focused conversation with you in
Mhm.
terms of your expertise, and given your rich experience in focused approach that helps build positive mental health. We have some questions that we would want to we would want to get your insights on. And
Mhm.
as for our participants, if any of you have queries particular to a topic that is being discussed, please do share them in the chat section below, and our team of panelists will help navigate them, navigate the questions. Does it sound cool?
Perfect. It sounds wonderful. I look forward to the questions, so you can keep them coming and we'll answer as many as we can.
Definitely.
Yes.
So on that note, I think let's start the session. We're looking forward to the session today. And so to start with, Dasha, I would want to understand that how exactly is yoga related to positive mental health for all?
Mhm. This is a wonderful question. So, yoga is, as you mentioned, certainly my background. And I appreciate the introduction that you gave on, the fact that the current times are sort of a different level to what we're normally dealing with in terms of navigating our mental health. So thank you for that really appropriate introduction to the session. Um, yes, and in terms of yoga and mental health, yoga has many facets to it. So some of you might be familiar with Patanjali, who wrote the Yoga Sutras and laid out kind of 8 limbs of yoga. However, there were prior systems to yoga that existed thousands of years before Patanjali wrote this 8-limbed system to yoga. And so it's really varied, and you can't even sum it up necessarily in the Yoga Sutras because there are so many kind of prior paths to yoga. So yoga supports mental health in philosophy, but also in the fact that yoga is very accessible and it has many different techniques that can be used to aid in this. So the pinnacle of all of these paths is really reaching meditation. However, there's yoga is unique because it addresses the physical body as well. So there are postural movements that you might hold. There's even preparatory movements and joint rotation and stretching that releases positive chemicals and hormones in the body that very much aid in mental health and making us feel better just on a regular basis. So, in the yoga path, we start with the yamas and the niyamas, and in Patanjali's path, there were 10 total yamas and niyamas. However, in prior paths, there were 20 plus. So, you can really look back at the philosophy and see that the path of yoga is very holistic, and many of those things involve uh, your relationship with yourself and then your relationship with society. So this is kind of where the yoga path starts, but just a summary of some of those ancient yamas and niyamas would be aspects of compassion and giving in society and higher levels of giving, and then just how to conduct yourself, really all stemming from this concept of truth and coming back to truth. So there's the physical movements, these precepts, there's breathing techniques, which are very effective actually in lowering levels of stress. There's also chanting and the ancient, swara yoga, which is a type of yoga involving sound. So involving instruments and chanting and mantras, but also I believe the ragas and certain styles of music that are very meditative. um, and then from here you have various levels of meditation. So there's pratyahara, which is a withdrawal of the senses, which is like a form of relaxation. And this is one of the things I wanted to really touch on today, because not only are we going to do a meditation together, but these kind of active and passive forms of meditation are very accessible online via free apps on your phone, via YouTube. And even though it seems really easy, these are some of sort of the quickest and most efficient ways that you can access what is the power of yoga, honestly, throughout your day, wherever you are, at your house, at your office, wherever you might be. So yoga has many different paths, and the most common path of yoga would maybe be hatha yoga, but ancient styles of yoga involve karma yoga, and that is very much being at service to your community and giving at a higher level, and this seva yoga, which is participating and kind of serving society around you. And then bhakti yoga, which is often referred to as the yoga of devotion. Um, and then there's jnana yoga, which is more kind of an investigative quality of understanding the mind, understanding your own mind, and really sort of in a meditative fashion, coming back to what is really truly yourself, or what is the true self, what is the atma. And then there's the swara yoga and japa yoga. Japa yoga is another ancient style of yoga that relates to this repetition of sound. So the mantra, the sound of Om being one of our first mantras, and there are many others. And then, later down the line, thousands of years down the line, came Hatha Yoga and then Patanjali, and then some of these things that we see that are really popular, maybe like Vinyasa Yoga. Um, and yet the restorative yoga and the yin and the meditative aspects have always been present in the path. So we move from this pratyahara, this withdrawal of the senses, the active, passive types of relaxation. And then from there, we go into dharana, which is a single pointed focus. So developing our ability to focus on something singular. And then from there, we move into dhyana, which is more of this kind of free form meditation, which is really like the crown jewel of yoga, which then aids us in reaching samadhi or enlightenment. So um, what I want to do today is very much make this as accessible as possible and give, some of the tips that I share with students, whether it's kids or athletes or wherever I might be teaching, so that there's, something tangible that everyone that's participating can take away from this session. So yoga in its ancient form and in some of its more modern forms really has so many facets that support very much mental health, and that's why we're here today. So thank you.
No, I think that's been a comprehensive, introduction. I think that you've shared to yoga. I mean, I'm not sure how many of us are aware of it. And as you mentioned, that some of the most easiest forms are pretty accessible, and
Mhm.
one can access these on their phones, on the move, irrespective of wherever you are. So one, given technology has kind of advanced in a way that it's definitely easier to access these, but it also depends on uh, how aware we are about them, right? To
Mhm.
access them,
Mhm.
right. Okay, on that note, I would like to move to the next question. Given your
Okay.
rich experience in meditation, right, which and the different techniques of meditation, which would you say is the closest to you? What's the closest to your heart? And for somebody who's just starting out, who's a beginner, which form would you recommend to them?
Mm. So touching on what is more accessible, I think that I would honestly recommend some of these guided meditations because that is, just a stage that's more easy to grasp for someone who's a beginner. And there are, and I even have some of these online that I can certainly share, but, these guided meditations kind of allow you to be led into the meditation and sometimes it's a training of the mind. It's kind of this increasing of the gray matter in the mind, which allows us to stay present, which moves into our next pinnacle, which is mindfulness. So sometimes it's like we have to develop that muscle to move into what is like pure form meditation. And in all styles of meditation around the world, there's usually this sort of sequential development towards some of those higher stages of meditation. So in yoga, that would be pratyahara, which for all of you who've been to a yoga class or practiced a yoga class in your home, there's the shavasana at the end. The shavasana is a relaxation. Often there's maybe somewhat of a guided element to that brings you back to your breath. Whereas in a yoga session, you might start with the breath. It brings you back to something that's grounding. It goes right into our next pinnacle of mindfulness. But um, it's tricky because I do want to say at this time, yes, we're in a very unique time, as you're really mentioning and highlighting in the introduction. Also, I think I just want to kind of offer this tip to be cautious, I think, with the technology because there's so many studies about how it really can increase our anxiety and some of those stress hormones. And while yoga is this beautiful counter to that, that's why we're here, that's what we're talking about. It's important to kind of have that intention and set that space, even if you're going to YouTube to watch, say, a yoga nidra. So Yoga Nidra is from one of the main schools that I studied under, which is the Bihar School of Yoga. But really, Yoga Nidra was likely around prior to that. It's been mentioned in many of the ancient texts. And so, if you are going to YouTube and you want to look for a guided Yoga Nidra, that's a wonderful way to find a guided relaxation. And then, you might also personally see, this is something the participants can unravel for themselves, is sound something that really works for you? Maybe for some people, the sound of a repetitive mantra or a chant is really beautiful. Understanding the significance of that. And it's like a prayer in a sense, focusing your awareness on something higher versus in the lower chakras or the lower kind of realms of our existence. Sometimes we're very focused on things that are certainly important, our basic needs, as you were mentioning. Some of those have been kind of challenged in this current time. And none of this is to take away from the reality of those things. However, it's nice for us to move into that space where we can think about something larger and move into kind of our higher intellect and our connection to source, our connection to the universe. And this is the purpose of yoga. So these guided relaxations can be the yoga nidras that are available online, maybe some of the sound bowl healings. There's another personal favorite, you did ask me this, in terms of meditation, which is Sufi meditation for me. So there's many forms of Sufi meditation. Just like in yoga, there's actually several types of meditation. But in Sufism and Sufi meditation, not so much the swirling dervishes, not the kind of standing and swirling and dancing in place, but more so the music. So it's very similar in a sense to Indian ragas, which I find very meditative. And that could be like a next stage after these guided meditations, is to really appreciate and value the beauty of this array of Indian ragas, which is designed for meditation and to move you into that space. I'm frankly obsessed with ragas, so I love them so much, and they're conducive. I mean, they're meant to bring you into that state of meditation. I do enjoy transcendental meditation. This is more where you get a personal mantra that has to do with the time that you were born, so it's specific to that. But there are introductions to TM, or transcendental meditation, online. And at the Idaho Yoga Co-ops, the 3 studios that I run, we have many different styles of meditation, and they're all valuable. I've maybe studied, I think, 12 forms of meditation. Tibetan meditation, studying with the Dalai Lama, different forms of Buddhist meditation, Zen, Theravada, Soku Gakkai, other forms of chanting meditation. There's so many. And so I guess I'm just going to encourage everyone that's on this call to really explore the different types of meditation, even just, via kind of a Google search or looking at some of what you find, on YouTube. Obviously, you want a reputable source, so, look for that. But there's really so much, and almost all of those forms will have an initial stage that's usually guided, that can then advance you towards maybe the higher forms of that style of meditation. So the one thing that I've noticed in all these forms of meditation is that the root is truth, or satya in Sanskrit and yoga. So all of these forms of meditation that I've studied are really bringing you back to what is actually true. And usually that's what's true inside of you, what is really true in this moment. And that can help us to sift through, all the things that are happening, and to be mindful and to be present on the current moment.
Perfect. That's nice to know. I mean, I think we've had two interesting. I mean, we've got to know about 2 interesting things from the response. I'm not sure how many of us were aware of Sufi meditation. So I'm sure, irrespective of whether you're into music or not, I mean, it definitely sounds. I mean, just hearing about it has this kind of soothing vibe to us. So yeah, I think we should definitely check that out. And the second bit that you mentioned about transcendental meditation, I think we've got a question about it as well. And yeah, could you just guide us a little more about it?
Certainly, yeah. So transcendental meditation is was invented by Yog Maheshwari and Rishikesh. So famous because the Beatles visited, and actually, it's a really fascinating place. So I've led groups to Rishikesh for over a decade, and I just have to say, there's these little Easter eggs, which were actually painted like they look like Easter eggs. This is my American reference, but they have pastel colors and they're like giant little eggs, but they're like little tiny pods that people might sort of live in and then meditate in the top. And there's this opening, at the top where I think it's like this connection to kind of the heavens and source. It's fascinating. There's all of these little like meditation pods for the individual attendees. But um, so yes, so Mahesh Yogi, he invented this form of transcendental meditation. So it's really actually more of a modern form, though many of these modern forms still pull at tantric meditation, and tantra is one of the basis of yoga. So in transcendental meditation, what makes it unique is that based on your, I believe it's your Vedic chart, specific to when you were born, the time you were born, the placement of the planets at that time. You get a particular mantra, which is just for you, and I believe I'm not sure the cumulative number of mantras that are used, but everyone has a unique mantra to kind of their birth chart. And so when you do an introduction, they'll go over this what transcendental meditation is doing. It's very practical, which makes it, it's just made it really a very sort of successful form of meditation in the US. So, what's unique about it is that it involves some sitting and chanting and then a period of lying down. So, it's almost in a sense kind of touching on that Shavasana and that Pratyahara and then sealing in the meditation with that period of relaxation. So, oftentimes you will sit and then you'll have a period of chanting the mantra specific to you, and then you'll lie down and sit up, and then you'll have kind of this closing. So it's very practical. I believe that there are ways that you can do that for like 20 to 30-minute sessions, and often the practitioners will do that morning and night. So that makes that meditation a little different. In Tantra, that's very typical to practice yoga or to meditate at sunrise and sundown. But at the same time, I think what's important is what really works with your life, and every little bit that you do, having that encouraging, kind of nurturing and supportive relationship with yourself is, and making it work for your lifestyle, I think is kind of the most important aspect.
Noted, noted. That's interesting. On that note, I would like to move on to my next question, which is on mindfulness. So, given that mindfulness is considered as an important tool when it comes to overcoming various mental health disorders, uh, how would you suggest that one go about it to develop a state of mindfulness?
Mhm. Um, yeah. So, what is mindfulness? Mindfulness is like, I guess, the ground, the foundation for many of these practices that we've been talking about. Yoga and Buddhism being very similar to yoga, and even some of Sufism and the tantras, and what's derived from the Vedas, all sort of has its foundation in mindfulness. So. Um, what is mindfulness? Mindfulness is an ability to be present in the moment, being able to kind of recruit all of the faculties of your mind, the faculties of your body, your emotions, and to kind of harness them in the present moment via awareness, being aware of what is happening around you. So, um, I also want to say that, you mentioned that there's kind of this reluctance to recognize some of the mental health issues that we're facing. The same thing is happening in the United States. And just to be kind of validating of why we're here and the increased challenge that we're facing right now, I know that depression is up 3 times what it normally is in the United States. And the majority of Americans have reported symptoms of depression just over this past, 7 months or so. So um, I think what's really important is breaking down those barriers and talking about and discussing and kind of opening up these pathways. So I really commend you for doing that. Um, and then, back to mindfulness. How do we develop mindfulness? I think we develop it through these techniques. So even very gentle stretching will, develop that mindfulness, that ability to know where your body is in time and space and understand what you're feeling, physically in the body. And then jhana yoga would be, a type of yoga that's a little bit more investigating of the mind, of the intellect, and it's the form of wisdom yoga. So this is an ancient style of yoga, and there are many questions. There's these initial questions that actually translate into mantras in yoga, and some of them are, the famous question of who am I, or the mantra of I am that, or what is really true, or you know what is who, I guess, is what is my true self, is my atma, is my purusha. So the atma being the true self, the purusha being your soul. So all of these questions are taking you like right to the root and right to that highest place. And so those questions, which are often ancient initiatory practices in yoga, obviously draw you right into mindfulness. But some of the things that I use on a regular basis for mindfulness are journaling. I think guided journaling, like guided meditation, is really important, because what we don't want to do is be kind of ruminating and repeating negative emotions. So from even just an anxiety or a depression sort of standpoint, or from a PTSD or a trauma sort of standpoint, we want to avoid kind of cycles of rumination, and yet we want to use something as a guide, which could be any of these tantric questions, or these, ancient meditative questions that guide many of these paths, like what is really true in this moment, grounding techniques of what is my body feeling right now, what is the temperature around me, acknowledging what emotions are present inside of you. So from a psychological standpoint, the naming of those emotions is a really positive step. It actually kind of takes the power away from those emotions and draws it back to you. Um, and then using the breath to move you into the parasympathetic nervous system as opposed to the sympathetic nervous system. So often we're operating via cortisol, shots of, chemicals coursing through our body that are causing us stress, and they're in relation to every little notification you get on your phone. So I would honestly say go ahead and disable those, because there's plenty of research on how those do inspire that kind of response of anxiety in the body. And so we have all of these kind of technological and then relational aspects just in our society and the way that it functions in our job and our families and all of these things that cause us stress. And so that increases the cortisol in our body. So anything that we can do to move us into the parasympathetic nervous system more of the time, any additional minute of the day, is really positive. And that can be just sitting and acknowledging what you're seeing. So this is kind of the foundation of mindfulness. I am seeing this wall. I am noticing this tree. I'm seeing this animal do this. My breath is moving this way. My breath is starting to calm down. I feel the ground beneath me. So these are some of the most basic kind of grounding mindfulness techniques that are often used in trauma response, but they're really positive for anyone that wants to incorporate them. So mindfulness is this ability to be present and to cultivate that I think we have to learn to set aside some time, even if it's just a few moments out of the day, um, to practice mindfulness and, like that muscle in the mind, develop more of that gray matter, which allows us more of that presence in the current moment. So I'm hoping that this is um, kind of registering, and there's some connections happening for those on the call. So journaling can be a good way to do that. Even like discussing emotions, discussing some of the things that you've set up this organization to address. Some of the guided meditations, sound, and anything that's relaxing, that basically moves you into your body, into this rest, relax, and digest kind of situation, which then secretes serotonin in the body, and more of the kind of positive chemicals that the GABA, that's the positive neurotransmitter in your brain that allows some of these positive systems to then begin moving in that direction of the parasympathetic nervous system. I hope this is making sense. So every little thing that you do, basically, that helps you to relax, that helps you be present, all of those things are really important.
Got it. I think that's well structured approach, I would say, to mindfulness. And I really hope, as you mentioned, that some of the participants at least will incorporate and practice them for better and a positive state of mind. With that, I'm now going to move on to my next question, which is the fourth pillar that we were that I mentioned at the start of the session, which is gratitude. So, what role do you think does gratitude play in our lives?
Gratitude is very important. Sometimes we think about that as something that modern psychology is really prominent in modern psychology, to acknowledge and to begin your day with gratitude. This can involve writing or thinking or sitting, whether or not you're closing your eyes, or really kind of whether you're in meditation or out of meditation. It's a form of meditation, right? Um, but I also think that gratitude is present in some of the ancient texts revolving around yoga. And I want to even take this further into this modern idea of mindful based self compassion. So, karuna, compassion, being not only something that's expressed outward towards others, but that initiates inside of the self. So, I find that this, from my study, this is actually very present in the path of yoga. This idea that we need to offer compassion, kindness, care, and just like validation to ourself to begin. And I think that that's a really beautiful platform, like a first step to start in, always. So, in any form, any way that you're moving your body, from the gentlest stretch to the more advanced yoga poses, any way that you're entering into a breathing technique, any way that you begin like a journaling exercise or a guided meditation, or even, just a period of relaxation where you're listening to some beautiful meditative music or sound bowls, whatever it is. I think that starting from that place of acknowledging what is happening inside of you, because that also kind of gives us back our strength, and then deciding that you're going to approach whatever it is with kindness towards the self is really paramount. And gratitude has a way of moving you into that. But I think with all of the techniques that we've talked about, starting from that place of self-compassion is really important. And I do think that it's present in many of the ancient texts that are thousands and thousands of years old. You're looking at the Gita, the Upanishads, aspects of the later Vedas. And so Gratitude is important because what it does is it naturally shifts your state. It naturally shifts your emotions. So in some of the ancient texts of yoga, gratitude would be one of our highest emotions. So even when I've been working with, different athletes, we will start from that place of gratitude and try to move into that as quickly as we can, because gratitude is kind of juxtaposed to, say, a position of fear. And often anxiety is actually rooted in some fear. There's different philosophies to understanding kind of the root of anxiety. And so I'm not saying that I'm an expert in that. It is something that I've read a lot about. But with anxiety, I think there's often something that's unrecognized or unaddressed. And I think connecting kind of with the true self and just acknowledging yourself and what's happening inside, especially in a way that is kind and is caring, is a way to dismantle what is anxiety. And so gratitude maybe moves you from kind of these lower chakras like the Muladhara, the Swadhisthana. You're just working on meeting those basic needs, which many of us find ourselves operating in this space most of the day. Okay, I need to make a living. I need to pay for a place to live. I need to gain food. I need to make sure that my family's taken care of. And then gratitude kind of moves you up more into like the anahata, like the heart center, and also into this Vishuddha chakra, this throat chakra, which is really expressing your own truth. Even into like the ajna, which is connecting with the higher intellect of the universe, the Saraswara, connecting to what is in many ways like infinity, or that higher collective consciousness. Gratitude naturally moves you into some of the highest emotional states. So whatever emotional state you're starting in, gratitude is going to move you into one of the highest ones. So just asking yourself the question in the morning or at night, which is a hard thing to remember to do. So one positive thing you can do is, write something and hang it up next to your bed. Like, what am I grateful for? Or practice gratitude, or writing the first 3 things that you're grateful for. And then that naturally starts that thought process in your mind. And you develop these, what meditation is basically doing is rewiring the connective tissue of the brain, the synapses that fires. And so if you have the tendency to have an anxious thought, which is initiated by something that you're fearful about, something that you're worried about, then actually practicing, just like you're developing a muscle more often, asking yourself, what am I grateful for? Or starting off with these first 3 things that you are grateful for, kind of rewires your brain to strengthen those connections in your brain. And then eventually some of those thought processes that we have that may be really hardwired from childhood can eventually become more frail and actually break and then dissolve into the brain. So it's really actually quite tangible. It's quite physical, even though it seems completely mental. There's a physicality to how that actually works, and it's fascinating. So gratitude is probably one of the most surefire tactics or practices that we can have in kind of our toolbox to move us into the space, which is an opposite space from feeling anxiety or depression, which many of us are experiencing at some level, especially right now, and that's completely okay. But what can we do to kind of initiate those opposite emotions and to develop those connections and make them stronger and stronger? So, so gratitude is very important. I find that's present in many of the ancient texts of yoga, and at the same time, where I'm like all about these practical, tangible things that we can do on a daily basis. I mean, I have to say that some of the most beautiful works of art really are the Upanishads and the Gita, which I've been teaching for several years. And I just want you all to just open them as well, because there's so much wisdom and beauty there, and everything that we're talking about is present inside of those stories. And and it's beautiful the way that they're written, because it's people coming with just regular concerns, like this call is focused on, like regular concerns of fear and satisfying and handling some of our basic needs, and how do we move into these higher states of wisdom and operating at that level. And there's many stories that we can all relate to that are in those books. So they're just amazing. So gratitude is very important. Thank you for the question.
Interesting. I think, especially, the point where you mentioned that the basic understanding that everything that happens at a psychological level is something which isn't, uh, visible. It all happens mentally, isn't entirely true. I mean, it's all connected, and the sequence that you mentioned definitely makes it a lot more clearer. Um, I'm going to quickly move on to one of the questions we have from a participant in terms of that it's regarding meditation. And
Okay.
so, yeah, their question is that basically they're trying to ask, how does one progress while meditating, right? Especially if they're starting new. And I think this is something which a couple of others have also questioned, that when you're new to
Mm,
meditation, there are chances of one not feeling entirely relaxed or complacent even after meditating. So
mhm.
if, especially for beginners, how would you suggest they keep it going and yeah, experience relaxation?
Absolutely. And this is a question that I receive all the time. So this is like the most common question. So you are absolutely in the right to ask this question. And I just want to validate the root of this question, which is that meditation, it shouldn't be intimidating, but it often is kind of perceived as intimidating. Like, oh, if I don't reach this perfect state, then I'm not in meditation. Was I meditating? Was I not meditating? Was I successful? Was I not successful? And I think an important way to look at it is to realize that it's a practice. And so it's about practicing as if you are slowly developing that muscle, which is kind of that gray matter of your brain, which meditators tend to have a larger gray matter, which allows them to be more mindful, more present, and practice gratitude. So all of these things are interconnected. So every little thing you do is important. Um, but for meditation, I think that really those guided meditations are really helpful to begin. Um, and to even have a few kind of meditative questions that you go in with, like these investigating sort of questions, can be really helpful. Now, I think that I would be doing a disservice if I didn't mention that, if you are experiencing particularly the effects of PTSD or trauma, anxiety, or meditation, or depression, meditation can be a little bit more challenging. And sometimes, if you feel negative emotions building strongly, it's natural for them to arise. But if you feel like it's not a positive experience, then certainly you should open your eyes and ground yourself, and that's entirely okay. I think that with the guided meditations, there's a more likelihood for being able to enter those kind of relaxing states, but it doesn't have to happen every time. Usually, for me, my experience is that um, even in, say, like my worst meditation, I always feel better afterwards. So I think that it's always positive, even if you don't reach a state where you're entirely relaxed. So say I have some major kind of crisis happening in my life, it doesn't mean that I would not want to meditate, though the natural stress response is to maybe not meditate when that is something that you would actually would benefit from the most at that time. So this is kind of human psychology. We almost have to kind of look deeper at our actions and what we're inclined to do, and then sometimes challenge that, and practice those things when it's really hard. Like right now, this is one of the hardest times to maybe start yoga or start a guided meditation. But if you kind of make a promise to yourself, if you write it and you put that somewhere that's visible, then maybe you can do that even at this time. So to answer that question, you don't always reach a state where you're completely relaxed. But what happens is, in the third sutra of Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras, it's the stilling of the fluctuations of the mind. So any steadying is positive. Anything that's steadying those mental or emotional fluctuations is positive. And that is also technically moving us into different brain waves. That's a whole other sort of thing, as is yoga nidra and relaxation and sleep and such. They move you into different kind of brain waves, brain patterns. So away from things that are quite fluctuating into something that's more steady. So yes, how to begin? I think to think about it as a practice and to think that every minute is positive, whether you're practicing for 1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, just, like anything in life, it's the effort that matters the most, right? Not the outcome. But every minute that you spend doing something positive for yourself, and, any form of meditation is a minute that maybe you don't spend in a state, in a sort of that responsive, anxious, or depressive state, usually because you're doing something proactive against that. So yes, I just want to be very encouraging of all of the efforts and all of the trying of any of these things, because they're all positive. So um, yes, I hope that I answered your question. And um, there's no like perfect space, like, oh, I achieved that space of meditation. That's only at like the highest levels, and that doesn't even happen to people that regularly practice all the time. So let go of this idea that like I have to reach this state where I'm completely at one with the universe, or I didn't meditate, because that's actually not how meditation is written in all of these ancient texts. It's like, no, it's the practice of sitting down and choosing to focus on the internal world versus the external world. So if we can eventually balance that ratio, that's really positive for us, and it allows us to be more present and more conscious in our lives, in our kind of
Right.
wake, and yes, in our activities outside of ourselves. So yeah,
Thank you. I
that
didn't.
was a very long response. Thank you.
No, no, but you made an extremely valid point. I think usually uh, there is usually this expectation, when one is practicing meditation, that there are these, I think, I wouldn't say unrealistic expectations, but these set expectations, that kind of then uh, even, which kind of prohibits us from trying it in itself, rather than giving it a shot. As you mentioned, the effort itself counts. So rather than looking at the outcome, we should definitely keep at it. Consistency is essential over you know not doing it, so to say.
Yes.
Now,
And yoga. Yes, yoga and Buddhism and Sufism, these are all practices. And so they're defined as practices. It's not like you're in this state or you're not in the state. The whole point is that it's somewhat of a continuous practice. That's the entire definition. So you're totally, totally correct on that. I do have to say that meditation does have the ability to take you to that highest state. And that's why it is like the crown jewel of yoga and all of these practices, because it can certainly do that. And if you practice, sometimes it's the times where you don't expect it, where all of a sudden you feel kind of this connection, and this period of moksha, this period of bliss and connection with the universe around you. So I don't mean to say that that's not possible, because that's entirely possible and the hopeful goal, but you only do that by the little bit of effort every day. Just like anything you want to do in life, any work, any sport, anything that you want to develop, that works the same way.
definitely. And I think coming from you, it adds a lot more value, and I'm sure, we're going to understand it better. I think we're kind of inching towards the closing time, so I'm going to quickly move
Woo.
on to another question before, we also have the exercise to move on to.
Mm.
So my question is around sleep. Could you suggest any meditative or mindfulness uh, techniques that one can practice before going to bed? I mean, the question is, I think, yeah, particularly from someone who is going through trouble of, staying awake for hours before, I mean,
Mm,
kind of like insomnia.
yes. Okay. So, looking at pranayama, um, some of the basic three-part yogic breaths are beautiful. So, breathing in a wave-like fashion, it's actually it very much stimulates that parasympathetic nervous system, which allows you to relax and go to sleep. So, if someone was to look up the yogic breath, there's three parts. There's clavicle breathing, thoracic breathing, back body breathing. And on those three parts, you can practice individually, you can combine them. And then, if someone's suffering from insomnia, the ujjayi breath is beautiful. So this is like the sound of air moving through a tunnel, a slight constriction in the back of the throat, kind of in the back of the nasal kind of cavity. And it's very steadying. So again, it helps to steady the breath, but it also steadies those mental and emotional fluctuations, and that's why it's such a beautiful technique. The nadi shodhan is the alternate nostril breathing. So not to get too kind of complicated or too in depth here, but there's the system of the nadis, the channels of energy through the body, of which is the Shashuna, your central energy channel, connecting all the chakras. And then there's the Ida and the Pingala, which is the left and right side of the brain. And yoga is so very detailed on all of these things. It's fantastic. So you want to balance the left and right side of the brain, and you want for sleep in particular, and this is drawing into Ayurveda, you want to have this rotation happening every 4 hours, which stimulates the digestive tract and then stimulates sleep. So you're moving through these times of day, which relate to your three main doshas, which is your vata, kapha, and your pitta, these times of day. So Nadi Shodhan, doing the alternate nostril breathing helps to kind of reset that natural switch that should happen every 4 hours, which can really help with insomnia. I also would recommend the yoga nidra, because yoga nidra is actually yogic sleep, is the what that is translated to, and that's this is a very particular sequential relaxation technique, which has been around for thousands of years. The Bihar school kind of honed it a little bit more, but which is yogic sleep. So it moves you through this rotation of consciousness. It moves you through breath. It moves you through visualization. There are yoga nidra techniques that can be 20 minutes, and there are some that can be over an hour long. So there's a wide range of these kind of standard ancient practices, some which involve all the aspects and are longer, and some which are shorter, but those very much aid in sleep. So I would recommend those.
Okay, thank you. Before we move to the closing note, I think we have a meditation exercise planned. So, could you take us through that?
Absolutely. So this is what's so important, because we can talk about all of this forever, right? But if we are true to the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, it says, and the entire path of yoga and Tantra, it says that the practice is paramount. So that's why we're going to practice right now, because we can talk about it and know intellectually and logically this is something, oh, yes, I should do this. I know I should do the yoga, but actually doing it is most important. So I would love for everyone that's on this call to really choose if you would like to lay down, if you would like to sit up, and maybe lean against a wall behind you, lean against a chair, lean against the back of your bed. So you can really decide. And I just want to enable you to find whatever position is most comfortable for you. Maybe that's laying down on your back. So I'm just kind of offering this as an option. You can lay down and spread out here and let the palms face towards the sky. So in our Shavasana at the end of a yoga practice, we always have the palms facing up, the toes turning out, and we want to relax the hands and the feet, because that is where most of the nerve endings in the body are present. So if we allow those areas to relax and to have no stimulus, to be touching nothing, that can also help us to move into our internal world. So let's practice some of those basic tenets of mindfulness here. I want you to softly close your eyes if that's comfortable. If for any reason that's not comfortable, find a single point to look at, maybe on the ceiling, on the ground, and start to relax all the muscles in the face, relaxing through the scalp, relaxing through the neck and through the collarbones and through the chest. Then begin to relax down through the arms, down through the torso, along your spine, relaxing the sides of your body, and feeling the weight of the back of your head, the weight of your shoulder blades if you're lying on the ground. If you're seated, the weight of your pelvis, of your sit bones grounding. Feel the weight of your body sinking into the earth, connecting to the earth. Relaxing down through the legs, whether they're outstretched or whether they're crossed, softening through the legs. Relaxing through the ankles and the heels, feeling their weight releasing into the earth as well. And then take 3 more waves through the body as if there's this gentle kind of water washing over you from the crown of your head down to your fingertips and to your toes. And imagine these 3 kind of waves of relaxation just washing through every part of your body. Letting those waves washing over you entail this long and relaxed exhale as you release. Now let's turn our awareness to the breath. And without changing the breath, just notice the quality of your inhale. As you turn your awareness to the breath, it's normal for the breath to begin to lengthen, for the muscles that surround the diaphragm and the cavity where our breath enters to soften and allow the breath to go deeper into its lower portions of our body, of our lungs. I want you to think about softening so much that it allows you to take in a larger volume of air into your body. We'll practice just the beginning of this yogic breathing, which is kind of a base breathing technique prior to pranayama. I want you to breathe first into the base of the belly and imagine that the air is kind of pooling in the base of the abdomen. And then this level is rising up inside of you through the rib cage, into the chest, into the top of the shoulders, into the neck. And you might sip in just a little bit more air at the top of the breath and then hold for just a second. And then begin pouring the breath out in an even longer exhale. The level descending from the neck down through the shoulders, the chest, the abdomen, into the base of the belly, where you might engage those lower abdominals to press out the last bit of breath, maybe pausing at the bottom of the breath. And then breathing again into the base of the belly. Feeling this level rising inside of you until you feel full of breath. And then again, exhaling from the top down slowly to the very base of the belly. And let's practice 3 of those pranic breaths here. Can you start to count the seconds, the length of your inhale without any judgment? Just Just acknowledging the length of your inhale in relation to the length of your exhale. And then naturally seeing if you can allow the exhale to be just a little bit longer than the inhale. Noticing that we are filling ourselves with prana, which is this vital energy, this life force that is present in all living things around us and in the oxygen that we breathe into the body. This is our kind of base pranic breathing technique. I want us to take a few more cycles of breath here and then see if it's possible to just pause even for 1 or 2 seconds at the top of your breath at your fullest point, and then to pause for 1 or 2 seconds at the very base of the back of your breath when you are kind of empty, when you've released all the breath from the body. Staying present with the breath, taking 1 to 2 more cycles of breath here. All that you need to think about right now is just your breathing, letting everything else go in this moment, releasing any other thoughts that naturally arise. And then, as you're ready, you might return to this normal breathing pattern or breathing cycle in the body, keeping the breath very calm and very relaxed. Noticing how just relaxing the breath naturally shifts sort of the function of the body into this relaxed state in the mind, in the organs, in the digestion in the body, relaxing the muscles of the body in turn, relaxing the mind. Taking just one final moment here after this practice of the beginning of your pranayama technique of kumbhaka, which is the retention of the breath, the antar kumbhaka, the top of the breath, this retention of silence, the bahir kumbhaka at the bottom of the breath. The kumbhaka naturally moves us into the beginning stages of meditation, which is why pranayama is so important in yoga. And yet, in these final moments, I want you to imagine your body just laying over the ground, or imagine yourself in the seated pose, almost as if you are kind of peering, looking down at yourself in this very relaxed state, breathing, laying on the ground or seated. And I want you to just kind of imagine the body lying there as if you are witnessing your own body in this moment, witnessing yourself in this calm and relaxed state. I'd like to leave you with one question, which stems from ancient yoga philosophy. And this question is in relation to the Soham mantra: who am I? This question begs you to connect with your true self, releasing anything that is untrue, anything that is not self, anything that entails itself with the ego, with the material, and rather it asks you to connect with your soul, with this cavity, this area behind the heart. A very famous mantra in yoga would be to respond or reply with the in English with the phrase "I am that," repeating this internally. I am that. This is the Satnam mantra. Breathing deep into the belly, starting to breathe into the fingers and into the toes, finding some gentle movement there as you prepare to keep this relaxation, this calmness with you as you start to move out of your meditation. You can bend the knees towards the sky if you're lying on your back and reach your right arm overhead, rolling onto your right side. If you're seated, you can prepare to kind of palm the eyes, maybe rubbing the hands together, creating some heat with this friction, and then placing the hands over the eyes, letting the muscles of the eyes soften. And then as you slowly draw your hands away, you can start to open your eyes. If you're lying on your right side, you can gently press with that left hand and meet us in a seated meditative pose. Our auspicious pose has one ankle just in front of the other, our hands on our knees, touching our first finger to our thumb in Dhyana Mudra. The palms facing down, this is our mudra for wisdom. If we turn the palms towards the sky in that same mudra, we come into our chin mudra, connecting us with the world around us. We'll lengthen through the crown of the head, drawing the chin towards the heart. We can glide our hands into heart center and simply bow towards the heart. And then gently opening your eyes. Again, if you close them, we're coming out of our meditation together.
Okay, I think that was. I really hope that everyone participated in the exercise, and yes, on that note, I think we've also exceeded our time. So quickly, Disha, we would want to close the session by talking about how today, given that it is World Mental Health Day, and I think the theme by WHO is on mental health for all. So if you could share yeah, if you could close the session with by sharing some insights with us on that.
This is a beautiful theme. I really loved it when I read it. I thought it's just such a beautiful like picture to paint this idea of mental health for all. And I think that, you know, that would entail us accessing these resources and realizing that these resources are really our birthright. I mean, they're particularly your birthright, being from India. So knowing that all of these things not only, you know, stem from your heritage, but they are there for you, for that purpose, for you to harness, for you to utilize in your life. And I think, with this beautiful concept of mental health for all, it also entails us, um, practicing kind of mindfulness and being open with one another, and also being there to support one another in this journey. So this is kind of my idea of mental health for all, sharing in the accessibility of these resources, supporting one another like you are very much doing with your organization. So kudos to you. Um, and and knowing that you are very much deserving of and, um, entitled to these beautiful, kind of balanced states that are just sort of waiting for you to access via these tools and these practices, which are yoga, which are mindfulness, which are everything that we discussed. So, um, yeah, let's all be an active participant in creating a world that is supportive of and that is encouraging of mental health for all. So let's all kind of take on kind of that, almost that duty, especially in this time, to be an advocate to support that for ourselves and for others.
Thank you. I think that's a lovely message to end the session. We've had a wonderful, the last 1 hour has been extremely insightful, enlightening, and for those of, for those of us who are new to yoga and meditation, I think we've had a wonderful introduction, and we have a direction, I think, for you, and we'll definitely incorporate it in our life, and especially at a time like this, I think we should definitely look forward to being active participants. So thank you so much, Desha. We've had a wonderful session. Thank you for, I'm sure it's pretty late at your side, so thank you so much for taking time and sharing these great insights with us. Thank you for everyone who's been a part of a session today. Uh, it's definitely nice to see you all. And I think on that note, we will take your leave. And yes, thank you so much. Have a nice day and have a good night.
Thank you. Hariam Tat Sat. All there is the truth. Namaste. Thank you so much.
Thank you.